It can often feel disloyal to talk to someone else about your family or partner's problems. However, carrying the burden of care alone becomes more and more difficult to cope with. Alice is now sitting in a cafe with a good friend. She is lamenting on how Molly's eating disorder is impacting upon their lives.
You cannot imagine what it feels like to get out of the house and for a bit of time on my own. I feel like a bit of knicker elastic that's been stretched beyond belief.
That bad, eh?
I don't know how much longer I can go on like this. We argue the entire time. John says he can't cope. Too busy at work. And she's my department.
Well, surely he can take a turn with meal times, or even at weekends. He can't be home that late. In fact, didn't I see him in his sports gear off to the gym the other night?
Oh, yeah. He needs that time off. That's his me time.
And what about yours?
Oh, I don't have any option. I'd love to take some time off. But the only reason I'm able to come out today is because Mum's come down for a couple of days. And she's holding the fort for a few hours. Oh, I'd so like to be less involved in Molly's life. When I was 17, I was away round Europe on my own, for goodness sake. But I practically have to spoon feed her, sit throughout all her meals, which, let me tell you, are not 5-minute affairs. After an hour, I'm exhausted. And she's usually eaten less than half that's what's been put on a plate.
Doesn't she understand what she's doing to her body? I don't understand it. Surely there's something you can do. She's always been such a bright girl. Surely, but surely, she knows what the outcome of all this is going to be. And she looks bloody awful. I hope you've told her that.
Nothing but nothing works. I feel completely useless. I've tried everything. John seldom mentions the eating disorder. He looks, he watches. It's as if she scares the living daylights out of him. He can't wait to get out of the house in the morning. She really freaks him out. And I nag, continuously nagging, or shouting or throwing things. Then I'll throw in a bit of weeping and wailing for good measure if I think it's necessary.
And?
Nothing. Blank stare. I can't eat this, Mum. I'm sorry you're upset, but I can't eat it.
She's going to land herself in hospital, that's what's going to happen. All her dreams about university, up in the air.
Don't, Sue. It's not her fault. I sometimes wonder if I'm to blame.
What have you done? The other two are fine.
We don't communicate anymore. With Molly, that is. We used to have such a lovely, close relationship. Do you know, she went out with her friends the other night. I thought it was really promising. But then she threw one of her anxiety strops before she left. What happens if they ask if we want something to eat afterwards? It's all right if we're just drinking and dancing. And then it's all these what-ifs for a whole 2 hours before she left.
I couldn't handle it. I don't know what I would do if she were mine, but I think I'd be taking a heavier hand with her.
When I did leave, I was a nervous wreck, kept looking at the clock. Tina's mum said she would take them downtown and they'd get a taxi back around midnight. Well, I couldn't wait for midnight. So I called her around 10 o'clock, 2 or 3 times, because she wouldn't pick up at first. And you know what? She was pissed off with me. Oh, thanks a lot, kiddo. You spoil my evening, work me into a high dough, and then saunter out, leaving me with a fallout.
What fallout?
Oh, you know, I'm worried, uptight, well, frantic, really. Especially when she didn't answer her phone for the 3rd time. I was beginning to think all sorts. You know, Sue, I sometimes wonder whether I'm handling this the right way. And somehow or other, I'm not. And there's a better way out there.
If she would eat something, then you wouldn't have to get all uptight with her, would you?
I spend my whole life worrying about whether she's eating or whether she's losing weight. She won't even let me weigh her anymore. Well, as for the older two, They rarely come round anymore. Always some excuse. I mean, I can see their point. It's not a happy home anymore. Hasn't been for months. Do you know, I sometimes think we all need to change a bit.
Living with an eating disorder evokes high levels of stress and frustration. The first job of carers is to optimise their own emotional regulation so that they can remain calm and reflective. Think of the instruction in planes to get your oxygen before helping others. One of the best ways of regulating your emotion is to get the support of others. For more information on carer coping, see the Advanced Learning section. The video demonstrates how when Sue uses strategies of collaborative care, such as empathy, reflective listening and open questioning, it provides a helpful way for Alice to consider making changes in her own behaviour that she hasn't thought about before.
You cannot imagine how good it feels to get out of the house for a bit of time on my own. I feel like an old piece of knicker elastic that's been stretched beyond imagination.
That bad, is it?
Oh, I don't know how much longer I can carry on like this. We argue the entire time. John says he can't cope, much too busy at work, and she's my department.
I can't say I totally understand Alice, but I do sympathise. It sounds as if you're all going through a really awful time of it at the moment. It can't be easy on any of you. Still, I do think it's fantastic, though, that you're able to take some time out with me today. I know you're busy with Molly, helping her through the illness, and I do understand. It doesn't stop me missing our daft laughs, though.
I'd love to take some more time out, but the only reason I'm able to be here today is because Mum's come down for a couple of days and she's holding the fort for a few hours. I'd love to become less involved in Molly's life. You know, when I was 17, I was away around Europe on my own, for goodness sake. I practically have to spoon feed her, sit throughout all her meals, which, let me tell you, is not a 5-minute affair. After an hour, I'm exhausted, and she's generally eaten less than half that's on her plate.
That must be tough. But it's good that you feel comfortable passing the reins to your mum. That must be really good for your own mental health. It all seems so different, doesn't it, since we were that age? From what you're saying, though, mealtimes sound particularly tough. How would you cope with it all?
Here, Sue uses empathy and reflective listening. She also affirms the fact that Alice recognises the need to look after her own mental health. Sue uses humour to normalise the situation by reflecting upon the nature of their relationship pre-eating disorder. She explores Alice's situation further with an open question.
I don't. Nothing but nothing works. I feel useless. I've tried everything. John seldom mentions the eating disorder. He looks, he watches. It's as if she scares the living daylights out of him. He can't get out of the house fast enough in the mornings. She really freaks him out. And I, nag, 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 continuous nagging, or screaming or throwing things. And then I'll throw in a bit of weeping and wailing if I feel it's necessary.
Wow, you're all traumatised. It seems to be taking its toll out on you and John in totally different ways then.
My anxiety levels are sky high. I sometimes wonder whether the way we're responding is making it worse. I feel like such an incompetent parent.
That's an interesting thing to say. From an outsider's perspective, I see 2 loving parents. And besides, Tom and Joe've got their life wrapped up pretty much right now.
We never communicate anymore. That's with Molly. We used to have such a lovely, close relationship. You know, the other night she went out with her friends, which I thought was really promising. But then she threw one of her anxiety strops before she left. What happens if they ask me if I want something to eat afterwards? I mean, if we're just drinking and dancing, that's fine. And it was all these what-ifs for a whole 2 hours before she left.
Oh, that must be tough. On the one hand, you must be pretty chuffed that she's got a social life going. Yet on the other hand, she's drawing you in to this angst before she leaves the house and leaving you steamrollered afterwards.
Sue continues to utilise reflective listening by giving her perspective on the situation in a non-judgmental tone. She also uses the developing discrepancy technique to highlight Alice's conflicting attitudes, approaches and feelings towards the ED.
Spot on. And when she did finally leave, I was a nervous wreck, kept looking at the clock. Tina's mum said that she would drop them downtown and they'd get a taxi back around midnight. But I couldn't wait till midnight, so I called her around 10 o'clock 2 or 3 times because she wouldn't pick up at first. And you know what? She was pissed off with me. I thought, thanks a lot, kiddo. You spoil my evening, you work me up into a high dough, then you saunter out and leave me with a fallout.
Wow. So you're all caught up in this vicious cyclical caring lark.
Cyclical what? Well, I mean, I was worried, uptight, frantic really, especially when she didn't pick up after the 3rd time. I was beginning to think all sorts. Oh, do you know, Sue, sometimes I wonder whether I'm handling this the right way. And somehow or other, I don't think I am, and there's a better way out there.
I can see that you're desperately worried about the eating behaviour. Yet she's drawing you into this infantile caring routine. On the one hand, you're aware that she's 17 and should be at least dipping her toes into the deeper waters of life. Yet on the other, that thought scares you. I'm sensing a lot of confusion all around Alice.
I spend my life worrying about whether she's eating or not, or whether she's losing weight. She won't even let me weigh her anymore. So it's a vicious cycle of arguing. Oh, the older two rarely come round anymore. It's always some excuse. I can see their point. It's not a happy home anymore. Hasn't been for months. Sometimes I just think that we all need to make a change.
Do you know, sometimes as parents, we need to step back and take a look at the bigger picture. Wonder what it would be like for us if our parents kept calling us on our mobile when we were 17. That's an interesting thought you said earlier, about you might need to change your ways. I don't understand that. Let's take the scenario of Molly going out the other night. What could you have done to make your anxiety levels more in check?
Sue rolls with potential resistance. She highlights the discrepancy between Alice's values and current behaviours and also zooms in on some change talk, being objective and introducing a scenario where it might be implemented.
Well, perhaps I need to lay off a bit. Perhaps John and I need to engage collectively a bit more. We seem to have been living in different worlds of late. Which is definitely not a great way to go. It's like, let's throw a divorce in the ED cauldron. Take that night, for example. We could have gone out for a drink or something to eat. We could have taken the opportunity to spend some time together, have some fun. Though he could use spending some time with her. But then we could have taken the opportunity to talk about that more over a couple of drinks. We used to share so many interests. TV, film, walking, gardening. Interests that didn't need to end. It makes you wonder where life as we knew it ended and this blasted eating disorder took over. I think we all need to change a bit. Communication between us all is the pits, and that needs to change. We need to kick old ED out.
Dads can play a really important role. Research has found that when given information about the illness and how criticism and over-softness doesn't help, they can change their approach and become warmer and more empathetic. Dads often try to get balance by going to the opposite pole of behaviour to their wife, e.g. mother over-involved, kangaroo, dad draws away, ostrich.
It seems to me as if you know exactly where to go from here. You've just reeled off a whole load of stuff in the last 20 seconds. Wow, where do we start? Who with whom, where? So much to do. How about one step at a time?
You're right. But I think the person to change and make that first step is yours truly. You know, I could do with stepping back. Give her a bit more space. Give myself a bit more space. Maybe if she could see that we won't let this eating disorder take over our lives, it could be a good thing.
It's important to banish the assumption that somehow you have done something to cause the problem, or that you're in some way to blame for the eating disorder. Guilt is not only misapplied, but can trap you into responding with unhelpful behaviours. Partners, siblings, and close others can be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Remember, you are a valuable resource. Eating disorders can and do put tremendous demands on the coping abilities of carers. In addition to getting information and developing skills to manage the illness, scheduling time out to relax and recharge is also necessary.